There is a ship in the Indian Ocean that does not exist. The United States military does not acknowledge it. The Department of Defense has no official record of its designation. Ask any Pentagon spokesperson about the MV Ocean Trader and the response is the specific combination of non-confirmation and non-denial that military public affairs offices produce when the question is accurate and the answer is classified. The ship has a Wikipedia page. There are photographs of it. It sails in waters that put it within operational range of the targets that the most senior levels of American government are currently discussing publicly, and the last time it appeared in a theater of operations within striking distance of a crisis point, the crisis resolved in a very specific direction, that was Venezuela. The MV Ocean Trader just arrived in the Indian Ocean off Diego Garcia. To understand why that data point matters more than almost anything else happening in the Iran situation right now, you have to understand what the ship is and what it carries and what it is used for. The MV Ocean Trader is a black ops covert platform, a ship that looks from satellite imagery and maritime traffic monitoring and the visual inspection of any port it enters, like a commercial shipping vessel, unremarkable, functional, the kind of vessel that moves through international waters without triggering the diplomatic or intelligence attention that a military hull would generate. But inside the commercial exterior is the operational infrastructure of a Tier 1 Special Operations deployment, more than 150 operators, the helicopter assets required to insert them into contested territory at night with precision, the boats required to conduct maritime approaches to coastal targets without using conventional naval vessels that would announce their presence on radar, the communications infrastructure, the command and control, the medical support, everything required to conduct a high-risk deep penetration operation in hostile territory and bring the team home. When this ship shows up in a theater, the intelligence community notices. When it showed up in the Venezuela theater, what followed was what followed. Now it is positioned off Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, well within the operational range of Iran, and Trump is publicly discussing the highly enriched uranium at Isfahan with the specific language of a man who has been briefed on the options and has decided which direction he is pointing. We have it under surveillance. We will get it, one way or another. That is the statement, unprompted, volunteered in an interview. Framed with specific reference to Space Force, to around-the-clock tracking capability, to the ability to identify by name and badge number anyone who approaches the facility. And then, at the end of the statement, the operational declaration that removes any ambiguity about the American intent: we will blow them up, not we will impose costs, not we will respond proportionally, we will blow them up. Any Iranian actor who gets near the highly enriched uranium at Isfahan in a way that suggests movement, transfer, concealment, or weaponization is going to encounter the surveillance architecture that Trump just publicly confirmed is watching the site continuously, and the response to that encounter will be immediate and lethal. But here is the operational problem that the public surveillance confirmation does not solve. Bombing the Isfahan nuclear site can delay the program. It can seal entrances to underground enrichment facilities. It can destroy above-ground infrastructure. It can set back the timeline by months or years, but bombing cannot give you the highly enriched uranium. It cannot guarantee that a precision strike has physically destroyed every gram of fissile material at a hardened underground facility built specifically to survive exactly the kind of precision air campaign that American forces have been conducting against Iranian targets throughout this conflict. The material that survives a bombing is still there, still potentially usable. Still potentially movable if Iranian technical personnel find a way to access it after the immediate strike effects are addressed. The only way to guarantee possession of the highly enriched uranium is to physically go in and get it. That is why Delta Force is being discussed. That is why SEAL Team 6 is being discussed. That is why the MV Ocean Trader is positioned in the Indian Ocean off Diego Garcia. That is why Trump's statement, parsed carefully by every intelligence service in every relevant capital, is not simply a warning to Iran. It is a public predicate for a covert operation that, if successful, will produce the physical removal of the most dangerous material on the Iranian nuclear program's inventory from Iranian sovereign territory. Netanyahu confirmed the same framing on a major American news program. Asked whether the war with Iran is over, he did not say yes. He said it accomplished a great deal, but it is not over because there is still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran. Still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled, still proxies that Iran supports, ballistic missiles they still want to produce. Degraded, he said, but still there. Two leaders, the American president and the Israeli prime minister, both saying publicly in the same news cycle that the highly enriched uranium has to come out of Iran, both saying the conflict is not over until it does, both using language that points toward physical removal rather than destruction. Trump says we will get it one way or another. Netanyahu says it has to be taken out. Neither one of them is describing an airstrike. Both of them are describing a possession transfer. The possession transfer requires men, Tier 1 operators, the kind who arrive at night from a covert platform that looks like a commercial shipping vessel and who have the tools and capabilities to enter a hardened facility, secure the material, package it for transport, and extract. In a timeline that does not allow the Iranian security response to close the corridor before they are out, this is one of the most operationally complex special operations missions that has ever been contemplated in the modern era. More complex than the Bin Laden raid in its physical parameters, more complex than the Venezuelan operation in its target profile, the Isfahan nuclear facility is not a residential compound. It is an industrial complex built around underground enrichment infrastructure, hardened against air attack, guarded by ERG security forces who understand exactly what they are protecting and what its loss would mean for the institution that has made the nuclear program its signature achievement and its primary surviving deterrence claim. The Space Force surveillance architecture that Trump referenced is the enabling layer. You cannot plan a precision special operations extraction of highly enriched uranium from a hardened Iranian facility without continuous real-time intelligence on the facility's layout, its security posture, the location of the material within the underground complex, the movement patterns of the personnel guarding it, and the reaction time and response capability of the ERG security force that would attempt to interdict the extraction team. Space Force provides the overhead persistent surveillance. But the statement Trump made that the surveillance can identify by name, by address, by badge number anyone who approaches the facility points to a collection capability that goes beyond satellite imagery into the signals intelligence, the human intelligence penetration, and the electronic surveillance that together produce the granular real-time picture that a special operations mission of this complexity requires to execute successfully. The intelligence picture has been built over months, the surveillance has been continuous. The targeting data that would allow an extraction team to navigate the facility, locate the material, and egress without being cornered by the Iranian security response is being refined with every overhead pass, every signals collection event, every human intelligence report from sources inside the Iranian nuclear program's support infrastructure. The MV Ocean Trader carries the team that would execute the mission. The question is authorization timing. And authorization timing runs through three simultaneous factors that are interacting in ways that make the next 72 to 96 hours the most operationally consequential window of the entire conflict. The first factor is the rejection of the Iranian counterproposal. Trump read the letter, called it totally unacceptable, stopped reading it, and went to meet the generals who were waiting. The diplomatic window that the ceasefire pause was designed to exploit produced a counterproposal that demanded American surrender on every strategic objective simultaneously. The diplomatic track has produced its result. The result is not an agreement. The result is a letter demanding the United States fold. The second factor is the Beijing meeting. Trump arrives in China within days for the first American presidential visit in more than 9 years. The administration is managing the confirmed Chinese weapons transfer to Iran below the level of public confrontation in order to preserve the diplomatic utility of the meeting. China's financial regulators have quietly instructed banks to pause loans to sanctioned refineries, providing the diplomatic predicate for the meeting to proceed. What the meeting produces will determine whether any Chinese lever exists to address the nuclear question through diplomatic means before the military means are applied. The third factor is the MV Ocean Trader's position. The ship that does not exist is in the Indian Ocean within operational range, when this ship was positioned equivalently. Relative to Venezuela, the operation followed. The combination of Trump's public statement about getting the uranium one way or another, Netanyahu's parallel statement about it needing to come out, and the Ocean Trader's positioning creates the data point cluster that intelligence professionals recognize as the signature of imminent operational execution rather than continued preparation. Now return to what Trump said about the combat operations question specifically, because it addresses the public framing around whether the conflict is over and what comes next. He was asked directly whether it is accurate to say that combat operations in Iran are over and done. His answer was no, he did not say that. He said they are defeated, but that does not mean the operations are done. He said American forces could go in for 2 more weeks and hit every single remaining target. He said approximately 70% of the targets have been struck with others conceivably remaining. He said even without hitting the remaining 30%, it would take Iran many years to rebuild. Parse that carefully. He is saying the military is not done. He is saying there are targets remaining that have not been struck. He is saying the option to hit those targets is on the table. He is specifically not ruling out a return to full combat operations. And he is providing the specific framing that the remaining targets, including the nuclear facilities and the highly enriched uranium, cannot be adequately addressed by simply not hitting them, because an Iran that retains nuclear material and reconstitutes its program over years is not an Iran that has been permanently defanged regardless of how long the military timeline extends. The counterproposal letter accelerated this calculus. The ERG hardliners who wrote the letter said enrichment is not negotiable at any time. That statement, read against the backdrop of Trump's statement that the uranium will be seized one way or another, and Netanyahu's statement that it has to be taken out, eliminates the diplomatic pathway for the uranium question. The two sides have stated incompatible positions with equal clarity. Iran says the nuclear program is not subject to negotiation. The United States and Israel say the nuclear material must physically leave Iran. There is no formulation that satisfies both positions simultaneously. The MV Ocean Trader is not in the Indian Ocean for a diplomatic mission. The F-35 that squawked a 7,700 emergency signal and descended rapidly toward the way is the data point that adds operational texture to the picture. An American fifth-generation stealth fighter declaring an in-flight emergency coming back from the direction of the Strait of Hormuz, not confirmed hit, not confirmed mechanical failure. The specific combination of emergency declaration and rapid descent is the signature of an aircraft with a problem that requires immediate landing rather than the return flight to its home base. Whether the problem is battle damage from Iranian air defense activity, mechanical stress from extended high-tempo operations, or a systems failure unrelated to combat, the data point confirms that American aircraft are operating in the Hormuz operational area with the frequency and intensity that emergency events at this rate would predict. The operational tempo is not decreasing during the ceasefire. The Israeli airbase in western Iraq that satellite imagery confirmed this week adds the geographic context for understanding the operational architecture surrounding Isfahan, the 9-kilometer airstrip that did not exist before the conflict began, constructed in the Iraqi desert without Iraqi government authorization, housed Israeli special forces and served as a logistics hub for Israeli Air Force strike missions against Iranian targets, equipped with search and rescue capability for Israeli pilots who might have gone down over Iranian territory, invisible to the Iraqi government and to Iranian radar coverage until the surveillance infrastructure that found it provided the documentation. American forces built the equivalent capability inside Iran itself. During the rescue operation for the downed American weapons systems officer near Isfahan, a temporary airstrip was established inside Iranian territory to support the extraction inside Iran during an active military conflict by a military that can construct a facility capable of landing any aircraft in the time it takes a conventional military to plan the mission. The proximity of both the Israeli-Iraq airbase and the American temporary Iranian airstrip to Isfahan is not incidental. Isfahan is in central Iran, within the geographic range that the Iraq-based Israeli airbase was specifically positioned to service for strike missions requiring extended range. The rescue airstrip established inside Iran during the SO recovery was in the mountainous terrain near Isfahan. The operational infrastructure around the Isfahan nuclear site, the American and Israeli capability to project force into that geographic space, has been demonstrated in actual operations during this conflict. What has not yet been demonstrated is the specific mission that the MV Ocean Trader is positioned to execute. The IRG's defensive posture around Isfahan has been the subject of continuous American and Israeli intelligence collection throughout the conflict. The Shad 129 drone photographed this week, equipped with satellite guidance and what appears to be a synthetic aperture radar pod or secondary signals collection system, represents the IRG Space Force's attempt to maintain surveillance and targeting capability despite the degradation of its conventional military infrastructure. The innovation is operationally significant. A drone with satellite guidance is not dependent on the ground-based command and control infrastructure that American strikes have been systematically eliminating. A drone with a SAR pod is generating its own targeting data independent of the coastal radar arrays that the Love Tap strikes hit at Bandar Abbas and Keshem Island and Minab and Bandar Kargan. The IRG is adapting. It has lost most of its conventional military capability. It is innovating within the constraints of what remains. But the adaptation is occurring in an environment where American and Israeli intelligence collection is watching every adaptation, every new deployment, every attempt to maintain capability in the aftermath of the strikes that have eliminated the infrastructure those capabilities depended on, the IRG's deputy foreign minister threatened French and British warships in the strait with immediate and decisive response if they accompany American operations. The IRG Navy doubled down by threatening a heavy attack on American bases in the region if additional Iranian tankers are shot up while attempting to run the blockade. Both threats are being issued by an institution whose largest naval base was just struck, whose forward staging platform was just struck, whose fast attack boat coordination center was just struck, and whose eastern approach checkpoint was just struck, in a single operational cycle that Trump called a love tap. The threats are the institutional performance of resistance rather than the operational capability to deliver it. An institution that had the capability to make the threats it is making would not need to make them publicly. It would demonstrate them operationally. The public threats without operational demonstration are the signature of an institution that knows it cannot execute what it is threatening and is trying to use the language of capability to substitute for the capability itself. 64 vessels turned back from the blockade. 4 vessels shot up after attempting to run the blockade. Every attempt to breach the American enforcement perimeter has either resulted in redirection or, for the vessels that pushed past the warning threshold, damage that ends their ability to continue. The blockade is holding with the methodical efficiency of a naval force that has been executing this mission long enough that the procedures are fully internalized and the crews are operating without the operational uncertainty of the first weeks. The diplomatic picture and the military picture are converging toward the same conclusion. The counterproposal was totally unacceptable. The ceasefire is on 1% life support by the president's medical analogy. The Beijing meeting provides a window in which Chinese pressure on Iran is theoretically possible but practically dependent on whether Xi Jinping considers the diplomatic relationship with Washington worth more than the strategic value of an Iranian regime. That is consuming American military resources and depleting American precision munitions stockpiles on Washington's behalf. The MV Ocean trader is in the Indian Ocean within operational range of Isfahan, and Trump said we will get that uranium one way or another. The MV Ocean trader and what it carries is the specification of the other way. To understand the operational challenge of the Isfahan uranium extraction, you have to understand the facility itself at the level of publicly available information. Isfahan is not a single site. It is a complex of nuclear research and industrial facilities that has been expanded and hardened over decades of Iranian nuclear program development. The uranium conversion facility, which converts uranium or concentrate into the gaseous form required for enrichment, is the best known element. But the near-weapons-grade highly enriched uranium that the American and Israeli intelligence picture has confirmed is present at Isfahan is not stored in an above-ground facility designed for routine industrial operations. It is an underground storage infrastructure that was built specifically to survive the kind of air campaign that has been striking Iranian military and nuclear infrastructure throughout this conflict, underground, hardened. Guarded by ERG security forces who understand the strategic value of what they are protecting, covered by the surveillance architecture that Trump publicly confirmed and by whatever additional defensive measures the ERG has implemented since the conflict began and the threat to the material became operationally concrete, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 are not conventional assault forces. They are the specific operators who train for exactly this category of mission, high risk, time sensitive, requiring the penetration of a hardened and defended facility, the location and securing of a specific high-value target, and the extraction of that target in a timeline that does not allow the adversary's security response to close the egress corridor. The Bin Laden raid in 2011 was the same category of mission against a residential compound. The Isfahan uranium extraction against an underground hardened nuclear facility is the same category at a fundamentally different level of physical complexity. That complexity is what the MV Ocean trader's position communicates. The mission requires the kind of Tier 1 operator capacity that the ship carries. It requires the helicopter assets for insertion and extraction. It requires the command and control infrastructure for real-time coordination between the extraction team and the broader military architecture that would be providing air cover, electronic warfare support, suppression of any Iranian military response that attempts to interdict the extraction corridor, and the search and rescue capability. That ensures any team member who goes down in the execution has a recovery architecture rather than a capture scenario. The temporary airstrip that American forces built inside Iran during the SO rescue demonstrates that the extraction egress architecture can be established inside Iranian territory on a timeline that the mission execution requires. That capability was demonstrated under combat conditions against an actual target in the actual geographic area where the Isfahan mission would operate. It worked. The SO was recovered. The temporary airstrip served its purpose and was abandoned. The lesson for the Isfahan mission is that the egress infrastructure does not have to be pre-positioned for weeks. It can be established during the mission execution timeline by forces with the capability to build a functional airstrip in the time it takes a conventional military to plan the option. The ERG knows about the Iraqi airbase now, the satellite imagery and the Iraqi military investigation that found it and the journalistic reporting that documented it mean that specific location cannot be used for the Isfahan mission without assuming Iranian awareness of its existence. But the portable airport infrastructure that Trump publicly described exists across 17 locations in the desert, none of which the ERG knows about in advance, none of which exist on any Iranian targeting database, and any of which can serve as the forward staging point for a helicopter insertion into central Iran that the ERG's degraded air defense network cannot reliably detect or intercept. 17 locations, portable, built and removed without leaving a signature, the ERG can pre-target. The operational architecture for the uranium extraction mission is not hypothetical, it exists. The surveillance is continuous. The insertion capability has been demonstrated. The extraction corridor capability has been demonstrated inside Iranian territory. The operator force is positioned in the Indian Ocean on a platform that looks like a commercial shipping vessel, and the leadership of both the United States and Israel are publicly stating that the uranium must come out. The remaining diplomatic variable is the Beijing meeting. If Xi Jinping uses the meeting to deliver to Iranian leadership the message that China will reduce its material support for the URG's military operations and support a diplomatic framework that includes physical transfer of the highly enriched uranium to American custody, the covert mission becomes less immediately necessary. The diplomatic pathway produces the physical result without the operational risk of putting Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 inside a hardened Iranian nuclear facility. If the Beijing meeting does not produce that result, if Chinese cooperation on the nuclear question is limited to the Benklone pause gesture that preceded the meeting and does not extend to genuine pressure on Tehran to accommodate the uranium removal requirement, the covert option becomes the primary remaining mechanism for achieving the physical result. The MV Ocean trader will still be in the Indian Ocean when the Beijing meeting concludes. Trump said, "We have it surveilled. Space Force is watching. If anyone gets near it, we will know, and we will blow them up." He said we will get that uranium one way or another. He said combat operations are not done. He said there are targets remaining. He said the option to hit every remaining target in 2 more weeks exists and has not been ruled out. Netanyahu said the war is not over because the nuclear material has to be taken out. The URG said enrichment is not negotiable at any time. 3 statements, one of them is incompatible with the other 2. And the ship that does not exist is in the Indian Ocean with 150 Tier 1 operators and the helicopters and the boats and the command infrastructure to make the incompatibility resolvable through means that do not require Iranian agreement. The surveillance never stops. The Space Force assets overhead have eyes on Isfahan around the clock. Every personnel movement, every vehicle approaching the facility, every attempt to relocate or conceal the material, every security posture change that might indicate Iranian awareness that the extraction is being planned, is being tracked, analyzed, and fed into the planning process that is producing the operational order that will eventually be signed. The operational order will specify the insertion axis, the helicopter approach route that uses the degraded Iranian air defense coverage to provide the window for the insertion package to reach the facility without triggering an organized URG response, the entry point into the underground infrastructure, the material handling procedure, the extraction timeline, the egress corridor, and the temporary airstrip establishment sequence. The air cover architecture that suppresses any Iranian military attempt to interdict the extraction team between the facility and the egress point. Every element of that order has been in planning development since the intelligence picture confirmed the material's location and the diplomatic track failed to produce an Iranian agreement to transfer it voluntarily. The Love Tap struck Bandar Abbas and Keshim Island. The destroyers transited with 0 hits. The directed energy weapons invalidated the drone swarm economics. The blockade holds at 64 vessels turned back and 4 shot up. The ceasefire is on 1% life support. The counter-proposal was totally unacceptable. The Beijing meeting begins within days, and the MV Ocean trader is in the Indian Ocean off Diego Garcia. When this ship showed up near Venezuela, the operation followed. The operators aboard it conducted the mission that the mission required. The result resolved the crisis in the specific direction that the American position required it to resolve. The highly enriched uranium at Isfahan has not been resolved. The Iranian counter-proposal said it would not be negotiated. Trump said it would be seized one way or another. The other way is in the Indian Ocean. The Space Force is watching Isfahan. If anyone gets near it, they will know. And the ship that does not exist is already where it needs to be. The question that the next 72 hours will begin to answer is not whether the uranium comes out. Both Trump and Netanyahu have stated publicly that it will. The question is whether it comes out through a diplomatic framework that the Beijing meeting might still produce, or through the specific operational architecture that the MV Ocean trader represents positioned within range of the target in the Indian Ocean off Diego Garcia. The uranium is underground. The Space Force is overhead. The operators are aboard a ship that does not officially exist. The generals were assembled. The counter-proposal was totally unacceptable. And the ceasefire that was already on 1% life support just received the Iranian ambassador's public statement that enrichment is not negotiable at any time, 1%, not 0, but the MV Ocean trader is already positioned, and when this ship shows up within range of a problem that has not been solved diplomatically, the problem does not remain unsolved for long. Isfahan is underground, the team is in the Indian Ocean, the surveillance never stops, and Trump said we will get that uranium one way or another. The other way is already moving into position.